Sometimes, the people you love the most can break your heart in ways you never imagined. When my wife passed away after a long battle with cancer, I thought the hardest part would be saying goodbye. But I was wrong. The real pain came days later, when her own children, the kids I helped raise, fed, and supported for years, chose to party instead of showing up to their mother's funeral. Before you judge or assume you know how this story ends, stay with me. Because what happened after the funeral changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and grief. And if you've ever felt betrayed by the people you consider your own, this story will hit home. And if you love real stories that expose the raw side of human emotions, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a story like this again. When I married Linda, I wasn't just gaining a wife. I was stepping into a ready-made family. She had 2 teenagers, Megan and Ethan, from her previous marriage. They were polite, quiet, a little distant at first, but I understood losing a sense of stability after a divorce can leave scars. Linda was everything I ever wanted in a partner. Warm-hearted, strong, and devoted to her kids. She worked long hours as a nurse at a hospital in Dallas, but still made time to cook dinner, help with homework, and listen when her kids needed her. I admired her for that, because I could see how much she wanted her children to grow up with love, even if their father wasn't always present. Over time, I started bonding with them. Ethan, the older one, loved sports. I took him to baseball games, helped him practice throwing the yard, and went to every match I could. Megan was quieter, artsy, introverted, but she'd light up when we talked about college and future dreams. I thought we were slowly becoming a real family, but I learned the hard way that appearances can be deceiving. When Linda was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, everything fell apart. At first, everyone promised to be strong for her. Ethan said he'd quit his job to be home more. Megan told her mom she'd delay her plans for college. But as the treatments began and the hospital visits got more frequent, both kids started pulling away. They stopped coming to appointments. They stopped helping around the house. They even stopped checking in. And Linda, sweet, selfless Linda, kept defending them. "They're just scared," she'd whisper. "They're too young to handle this." But they weren't too young to handle weekend parties, new relationships, and endless social media posts showing them smiling while their mother was fading away. The night before Linda passed, she whispered something I'll never forget. She said, "Promise me you'll make sure they're okay." And I did, because at that moment, I still believed they cared, deep down, that they'd come around when reality hit. I had no idea how wrong I was. The days after Linda's death felt unreal. The house was quiet, like the air itself refused to move. Every corner still smelled faintly of her perfume, vanilla and jasmine. Her favorite mug sat by the sink, and her slippers were still under the couch where she'd left them. I couldn't bring myself to move anything. It felt like doing so would erase her completely. I called Megan and Ethan to tell them their mother was gone. Megan's voice cracked at first, but she didn't cry. Ethan didn't say a word, just silence, followed by a quick, "All right, thanks for letting me know." That was it. No, how are you? No, when's the funeral? Just distance. Still, I told myself it was grief. People handle loss differently. So I began arranging the funeral. Flowers, casket, service, everything. I did it all myself. Linda deserved that. 3 days before the funeral, I texted them both. I told them the date, time, and where it would be held. I even offered to pay for their flights, since Megan had moved to Austin and Ethan was working up in Denver. They saw the messages. I could see the read receipts, but they didn't reply. The day of the funeral arrived, a bright Saturday morning that felt wrong, like the weather didn't understand the mood. The church was small but beautiful. The choir hummed softly as people filed in, Linda's co-workers, our neighbors, and a few friends from the hospital. But her children's seats remained empty. I kept glancing at the door, expecting to see them rush in, apologetic, out of breath. I imagined Megan's tear-streaked face, Ethan's quiet remorse. But the doors never opened. As the service went on, I held the folded paper of my speech so tightly my hands trembled. I had written for all of us, for me, for them, for her. But standing there, looking at the empty front row, my throat closed up Afterward, as I stood near the coffin, people came up to offer condolences. They must be devastated, one of Linda's friends said softly, referring to her kids. I nodded weakly, not knowing what to say. That night, when I got home, I saw it on social media. A picture of Megan and Ethan together, drinks in hand, wide smiles, flashing lights behind them. The caption read, "Much needed night out. Life's too short to be sad." I remember just staring at the screen, trying to understand what I was seeing. Their mother's funeral had just ended hours ago. While her body was being lowered into ground, they were dancing in some club, celebrating. What? Freedom? Relief? Grief can twist people in strange ways. But that night, I didn't feel sympathy. I felt betrayal. I wanted to call them, to scream, to ask how they could do that. But Linda's last words echoed in my mind. Promise me you'll make sure they're okay. So I didn't call. I didn't yell. I just sat in the dark, surrounded by her photos, and cried harder than I ever had in my life. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't just grieving her death. I was grieving the illusion of family we'd built. A week after the funeral, I finally worked up the courage to call them. Not out of anger. At least, that's what I told myself. But because I needed answers. I needed to understand how two people who grew up under the same roof as the woman I loved could choose a nightclub over her farewell. Ethan picked up first. His voice was casual, distant, like we were talking about the weather. I told him I'd seen the photos. He sighed, and after a long pause said, "Look, man, Mom was gone long before that funeral. Sitting there wasn't going to change anything." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Before I could respond, he continued, "She suffered for years, and you dragged it out. We didn't want to remember her like that." Drag it out? Linda fought for her life every single day, and I stood by her through every chemo session, every sleepless night. But in his words, all of that turned into an inconvenience. Megan didn't even take my call. She texted me later, a single line, "Please stop trying to make us feel guilty. We grieved in our own way." I stared at that message until the letters blurred. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was some immature defense mechanism, but deep down it felt colder than that. It felt deliberate. Days turned into weeks. Their silence stretched wider. No visits, no calls, no flowers for their mother's grave. Instead, I kept finding new party pictures, new smiles, new trips. Life moved on for them, like she had never existed. One night, I drove to the cemetery. The wind was sharp, and the grass was wet with dew. I sat by Linda's grave, tracing her name with my fingers. "I don't think they loved you the way you thought they did." I whispered, "But I'll still keep my promise." I started sorting through her things, the photo albums, the journals, her hospital paperwork. And that's when I found something I hadn't seen before, a letter sealed in an envelope addressed to my kids. The handwriting was shaky, but it was hers. I hesitated for a moment. It felt wrong to open it, but something inside me said I needed to, so I carefully tore it open. Inside was a 2-page letter, written during her final weeks. She talked about forgiveness, about how much she loved them, about how she hoped they'd find peace. But near the end, she wrote something that made me sit up straight. "I know my children are angry with me. They think I chose you over their father. They never understood that I just wanted stability, a home where love wasn't conditional. I hope one day they'll see the truth." I froze. All those years, I thought we were a happy blended family. There had been resentment simmering under the surface. They didn't hate me because I was their stepdad. They hated me because they thought I replaced their real dad. Everything started to make sense. The distance, the coldness, the refusal to visit her at the hospital. In their eyes, I had stolen their mother's loyalty. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. If anything, it made the betrayal feel sharper, because Linda had carried that pain with her to her grave. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase after them anymore. If they couldn't show up for their own mother, nothing I said or did would change their hearts. But life has a cruel way of circling back. Because just when I thought I'd buried the pain with her, a message arrived that would tear open everything again. 2 months after the funeral, life had started to regain a fragile rhythm. The mornings were still heavy, but I tried to fill the silence, mowing the lawn, repainting the porch, keeping busy just to keep from thinking. I'd started therapy, something Linda always wanted from me, and it helped a little. Then one night, I got a message from an unknown number. It was from Megan. The text read, "I found Mom's letter. Can we talk?" I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but something told me to answer. Within an hour, she was at my door. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. The girl who once looked at me with resentment now looked broken. She held the letter in her hands, the same one I had read weeks earlier. "I didn't know she felt that way," she said softly. "I thought she hated us for pulling away. I thought she replaced Dad with you and forgot about us." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. She explained that after the divorce, their father had poisoned them against Linda, told them she was selfish, that she didn't care about them. When Linda got sick, their father told them it was karma. They grew up believing their mother had chosen me over them, and that attending her funeral would be a betrayal to their dad. That was the night everything snapped into focus. Their absence at the funeral wasn't just cruelty. It was confusion, bitterness built on lies. Ethan came by a few days later. He didn't say much, just handed me a small bouquet of flowers and asked where her grave was. When we got there, he stood for a long time, staring down at her name. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I stepped back and let him have that moment. He cried. Not the angry tears of guilt, but the kind that come when the truth finally breaks through denial. Over the next few weeks, we talked more. They asked questions about her last days, her final words, the things she said when she thought no one was listening. I told them everything, every detail, every memory. And though it hurt to relive it all, it also healed something inside me. We started visiting her grave together every month. Sometimes we bring flowers, sometimes just sit there in silence. But it was progress. Still, part of me knew that what was broken would never fully mend. You can forgive, but you can't unsee what people show you in your darkest hours. Linda's death taught me that love doesn't always survive misunderstanding. But it also taught me that grief has layers. And sometimes the only way to uncover the truth is to let time do its work. Now, when I walk past her picture in the living room, I feel something lighter. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. And I know that somewhere Linda is smiling. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because forgiveness finally found a way through the wreckage. If this story moved you, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comment below. Family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters most. And if you love real stories that explore the truth behind human emotion, betrayal, and redemption, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Because the next story might just change the way you see love and loss forever.